Hey everybody, how's it going? Mork here. Today we'll be looking at some of the enchanting options that Mordheim has. Again, we're gonna be covering the Paramod because I feel like Paramod is the way to play Mordheim these days, honestly. I'm also like not going to make like a tier list for the enchantments because I just feel like it's a little bit awkward. So instead, actually, we're just going to have like a session where we are just going to talk a little bit about the enchantments for the shields. So let's start with the mark of absorption. So this one says, when receiving range damage, gain 8% range resistance for 3 turns, and it's stackable. So here's the thing about the mark of absorption. I think like the question is, would you like to have like 8% range resistance now? Or would you like to have like 8% ranged resistance later? Because there is like an enchantment which is called, actually mark of deviation is even like 12%, right? So if the idea is that you don't want to get hit by range damage, wouldn't you ever go for the mark of deviation? Or wouldn't you ever go for the mark of deflection and have like sort of a hybrid setup? So, right, because what's the scary part about ranged attacks? It could be a headshot, that could be like scary. A knee shot is terrifying. Crippling shots are terrifying. I mean, you don't want to get hit by these effects in the first place, right? So, so I don't really like mark of absorption, to be honest. Yeah, I don't really like it. It's not bad. It's just, I don't know. Like, I wouldn't play it. It's alright to have, but like, sure, mark of absorption starts becoming like better after you hit like the second stack at 16%. Then it starts becoming better than mark of deviation, right? But that implies that you got hit in the first place, which is what you're trying to avoid, supposedly. So, mark of absorption could be like a thing against, like, damage archers? But who are the damage archers in the game, really? There's just, I think it's literally just marksman, who is a proper damage carry, a damage range carry. Like everybody else is just kind of a role playing to be a marksman, right? That's kind of my opinion on that. Right. So mark of absorption, it's not very exciting. Mark of aegis or aegis, to be honest, I don't know how to pronounce it. I know that back in the League of Legends, it was like a big debate on how to like pronounce it. I believe it's actually like English. In English, it's actually like ages, so I'll just go with that. So Mark of Ages increases the chance to parry by 20%. Um, I think it's all right. The thing is, since you're already using a shield, your parry chance is gonna be like usually good enough already. If I had here with this like Verminkin right here, 20 weapon skill, I would be at like 120% parry, and that's quite decent. You could maybe like consider the mark of ages on the captain, the mercenaries, but he already has plus 20% chance to parry. And there is also like a bunch of like monsters which just straight up ignore parry. And in that case, you just like prefer like Mark of Iron, just for like the increased armor, right? So Mark of Ages. I don't know. It doesn't really excite me. I guess the blue one can be quite nice. Like honestly, when you're like leveling up and you still don't have like your weapon skill up with your guys, the blue one can be really nice just to have like that 95% chance to parry. But with the purple one, I don't know what you're doing. Like if you're trying to do some kind of a parry build, I think you're gonna be like better off with some sort of a mark of empowering, right? And that's like when successfully parrying a melee attack, receive an 80% chance to recover 2 offense points. So yeah. So as the Mark of Ages, I don't think it's like very good, but that's okay. I think I think that's fine. All right. Next one that we have is Mark of Bravery. And I actually really like Mark of Bravery. Mark of Bravery is one of my favorite um, enchantments for shields to go on the henchmen. Because like getting 40% fear and terror test on like a dodge tank is relatively difficult. If we take like at skills here, we have like Nerves of Steel, and Nerves of Steel give you like 20% fear and terror, right? You also have like Pendant of Courage. So Pendant gives you like 15% to All Alone, Fear, Terror, and Mark of Courage gives you plus 15% to All Alone, Fear, and Terror tests. If you're okay with like dumping the All Alone a little bit, then I feel like the Mark of Bravery is like really really good. I like this one. I think this one just kind of like makes sense. Yeah. All right. Next one is Mark of Deflection, and I feel like this is like the most common rune, or like the most common mark that you can use on like a melee resistance tank. Yeah, because yeah, if you're playing like a melee resistance tank, you obviously want melee resistance. And because you're a melee resistance tank, you also want to have like range resistance, because you don't want to be like vulnerable to range attacks as a melee resistance tank, in my opinion, either. So Mark of Deflection, it just kind of works. Yeah, it's really really good. Yeah, it's really really good. You can even see that like this vermin here, this vermin can hear the mass murder, makes him land at 54 melee resistance, which is quite neat. Mark of Deviation. Right. So like if for some reason you're facing maybe in PvP a warband which overly relies on the range attacks, I think I would prefer the Mark of Deviation over Mark of Absorption because of the immediate impact. Like you get the 12% right away. I think we could just kind of like covered it. To be honest, I don't really use Mark of Deviation, so I don't know. But like if you're like a range hater, I think I would prefer this one. Okay, next one is Mark of Empowering, and I like this one. When successfully parrying a melee attack, you receive an 80% chance to recover 2 offense points. You kind of like become a captain, like a parry captain. I think like Mark of Empowering is like especially freaking brutal on like parry henchman with a shield. This can be like really fucking disgusting. Like Mark of Empowering on a spear warrior. So like for example, like spear warrior, right? Spear Warrior. So what are you going to do? You attack with a basic attack with a spear, then you attack again, and then you attack again with an adrenaline rush, and then you put yourself into a web of steel. And then the enemy attacks you, Mark of Empowering triggers, and you get 2 offense points. So let's assume here in this case that you also parry twice. In those cases, like those spear counterattacks, because it's a parry, you're gonna get like 2 more attacks in. And like let's say also the last parry triggers, you get like 2 offense points, so you get like third attack in. I don't know if that makes sense. Does it make sense? I hope it does. So like essentially, from Mark of Empowering, from 1 Web of Steel, you can get like 4 offense points and like potentially 3 counterattacks. So that's why this can be like really freaking brutal. I think like especially on warp guards or like warriors or any sort of a henchman which has a shield. And this is also like why shields are like so freaking busted, because like the enchanting options are like crazy. So yeah. Alright. Next one that we have is Mark of Health. And this one increases poison resistance by 30% and versus resistance by 40%. So I would recommend like getting Mark of Health if you want to do some like poison hate. So like for example, if you know that you're gonna be facing in a PvP battle somebody who's running poison, it's probably a good idea to grab Mark of Health. The other sort of a thing that you could do is put this on like a warp guard, but this is just kind of like experimental, I guess. The idea is that like with the warp guard, you could potentially like reach such high amount of poison resistance that you can like stay in the cloud and don't take any damage, and also like you max out your wordstone resistance. So yeah. I don't know how I feel about that, to be honest. It's just like a thing that like popped up in my mind in the past. Yeah, I think that's about it, to be honest. Mark of Heroism. So in Paramod, this had been changed, I believe, like Mark of Heroism and Mark of Bravery. One was like about passing fear, the other was about passing terror. So in Paramod, this one decreases initiative by 13. It's alright. Like, I guess it's alright. Like, it definitely gives you like a better range for 2-turning. Like, if you're playing, if you have like a hammer, a Mark of Heroism, you're gonna be at like minus 18 initiative, right? That's quite good, actually. So it's gonna like essentially give you like a better 2-turning potential against enemy, because like when you swap weapons and you swap to something which is like fast, yeah, like it increases your range for 2-turning. The other way to use this like Mark of Heroism is by adjusting the initiative of your units. I wouldn't do that, to be honest. I think like if you have to adjust your initiative with Mark of Heroism, then you kind of like messed up something in your build. If you like absolutely have to do this, I think you probably messed up the build somewhere, because there are like way better enchantments than like Mark of Heroism. So I don't know. I think Mark of Heroism just simply exists for any like 2-turning action, and that's about it, honestly. Okay, so Mark of Iron, it's like obviously amazing because like I mean, it's like armor absorption by 10%, right? Increase. I think it's also just like common, the most common enchantment for shields that people prefer, but like for a very good reason, right? I mean, it's hard to come by like good armor, so this is excellent, right? All right. Next one that we have is Mark of Protection, and I think actually Mark of Protection is pretty legit, right? So this one says, when successfully parrying a melee attack, gain a 6% melee resistance bonus for 3 turns, and it's stackable. I think this one is quite legit. This one is quite legit, especially in my opinion, if you're gonna like try to run it on like a sort of a weird hybrid setup for the captain, you know, where you're gonna be like also parrying, but also at the same time you're gonna be like melee resisting. So yeah, this is great because like when you parry, you become protected. But when you parry, you also lose that protection. So like getting protection after losing it is great, you know? So like what could it look like? So it could look like somebody hits you, you parry, somebody hits you, you parry, and now you're like at 12% melee resistance. And they try to hit you again, but they miss, right? Um yeah, it's great. And like I don't think it is like counterintuitive, but like or counterproductive. But if you like parry, or like if somebody misses you, then you don't parry. I don't think that's I don't think that's counterproductive whatsoever. I think you should be like happy enough. So yeah, I think this mark I really like it. It's very fascinating, and I think I would like to maybe try it one day on like some sort of a weird hybrid captain, maybe like a Serenity captain. Um, I don't know, maybe not Serenity. It's just like it's cool. It's really cool. All right. The next one that we have is Mark of Recovery. So this is just similar to the parry, but this one is actually worse because parry as a mechanic is kind of better. But like still, it's like amazing, right? And like this is my issue with dodge characters in general, because like Mark of Recovery, like what is it? So this one is, when successfully dodging a melee attack, you receive an 80% chance to recover 2 offense points, and you cannot exceed the maximum, but it doesn't matter. Is this consistent? So this one doesn't have like cannot exceed maximum, but this one does have cannot exceed the maximum. I mean, that's pointless, but it's fine. Yeah, like Mark of Recovery is amazing if you're able to like dodge. And I think this actually quite pairs nicely with the skill, which is counter blow. Oh, I can't really show you. But counter blow, it kind of like allows you when you dodge and you like counter attack, you have like plus 10% higher crit chance or like plus 20% higher crit chance. The issue that I have with this sort of a thing is that this is really freaking cool, but like this enchantment, this effect is stuck on a shield, right? And a lot of dodge characters, or like characters that can build dodgy, um, they don't have access to shields. So like, for example, ghouls. You could There is no like Mark of Recovery ghoul build, right? That sucks. There is no like Mark of Recovery flagellant build because they don't have shields, so yeah, I think it's just kind of a shame, to be honest. Or like there is no mark of recovery. I mean, I guess you can technically speaking do like a maiden, but you would be insane to do that. Um, but there is no like mark of recovery impressive build because impressive can't they can't have shields, but like you wouldn't want to have the shield on impressive anyway. But the point I'm trying to make is that if like this effect would be like on counter blow, it would be like, in my opinion, much cooler than like it being on this. It would just like make dodge builds so much better. And I think it could also like potentially like open up some possibilities for dodge impressive builds, which I don't think they exist at the moment. I think like currently there is almost no reason for you to go for a dodge impressive. You're probably much better off like going for strength and toughness and just like do some berserking or something like that. Anyway, now that that opinion is out, uh, other than that, Mark of Recovery I think is just freaking great, right? The issue is like what it competes against. So like, if you're trying to do Mark of Recovery, then you're not getting like Mark of Iron, right? And then you're not getting like Mark of Deflection, and then you're not getting Mark of Bravery. So are you brave enough to not have like this enchantment on your dodge characters? I don't know, maybe. But like honestly, I feel like this Mark of Recovery thing, I would love to see it on these guys, on these Verminkins. I think if you played like a dagger Verminkin with skills which like up the crit chance quite a bit, you could have like a 40% chance to crit counterattack, and you know, if you like crit the enemy, then they would get like really mad and it would be hilarious. So, you know, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Mark of Recovery. Okay. Anyway, next one is Mark of Shielding, and this one is essentially like I just want more melee resistance, right? It's so this is just like the option. You can either get like 8% melee resistance, or you can get like 6% from Mark of Deflection, and you'll also get like range resistance. I think it's just kind of preferential, right? And it also just kind of depends on the enemies that you're facing. So if you're like facing sisters, uh, most of the time they're not going to have like ranged characters, unless you're Kitten Paw. So you can grab it, right? You get like plus 2%. But generally speaking, for melee resistance tanks, you would kind of prefer having the range resistance option as well, in my opinion. Mark of Spellbreaking. So this one increases magic resistance by 10%. I mean, if you're like trying to do some magic hate, you know, trying to counter those necromancers, I think this just makes a lot of sense. Like 10% is a lot, right? Like imagine that imagine you have like 80% magic resistance, right? And then you like pop like Mark of Spellbreaking, and now you have 90%. So that goes like 1 in 5 chance to like get hit by a spell to like 1 in 10. So like if you're stacking magic resistance, Mark of Spellbreaking is like a good thing to grab as well. Yeah. Alright. Next one is Mark of Steel, and this one increases the critical hit resistance by 10%. So I feel like if you are running Mark of Steel, okay, so let's talk about like critical strikes a little bit. So critical strikes, they pierce armor, right? So if you're like running an armor build, in theory, you would want Mark of Steel because it makes you more immune against critical hit resistance. But if you're playing an armor build, then you probably just prefer the Mark of Iron, right? I think like Mark of Steel is just usable, but I would just use it as like a crit build hater sort of a thing. So like if you know you're in a PvP match, you're gonna be coming up against like a team that crits a lot, like you're gonna be facing like crit marksman, or you're gonna be facing crit skaven, right? I think it makes sense in that case to also like bring Mark of Steel. But that's about it, honestly. Like if you're playing like a defensive character, you're probably just gonna like get that critical resistance from the luck enchantment in your weapons, right? Like I think you're gonna be looking for like a different defensive enchantment on the shield. Alright, and the last one is Mark of Tenacity, and this one I'm not really a fan of. 40% all alone tests. The thing is, I think this one is just kind of like an overkill, right? Is this good? Usually, the issue is not like upping the all alone resistance. Usually, the issue is like upping the fear and terror resistance. That's usually the issue. Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't use it to be honest. I don't think it's good. So yeah, that was my shield review. If you have like any different ideas about the enchantments or something like that, feel free to comment or something. But yeah, thanks for watching. And next time we'll probably go over the head enchantments. Then we'll do weapons. And I don't think we're gonna be doing this enchantment. Maybe we'll have like a short discussion. Right. Take care and bye bye.